thank you for inviting me to Openly Secular Day. I love the whole openly secular thing. I think it's a really good idea because like when I came out, well, I can talk about this at the end, but you know, if I had just said I was openly secular to my parents, they probably wouldn't have stopped speaking to me for a year because they wouldn't really know what that meant. But so I really think that's a great way to kind of soften the edge of the word atheist to people that might be really just too much to hear, and they have a lot of other associations with that word, while still being true to your beliefs. So I didn't prepare anything, but I said that I would read like for 15 or 20 minutes from my monologue and then take questions. And I haven't done this in so long that I got out my old theater thing here with all the lighting directions and everything else. And I went through it at the hotel, and I thought, I'll start at the very beginning because it has some sort of funny things and it's about my childhood, and then I'll skip to the part which to me is really the heart of it, which is when I really, all the thinking I had right after I really realized that I didn't believe in God anymore. Okay. On September 10th, the morning of my 7th birthday, I came downstairs to the kitchen where my mother was washing dishes and my father was reading the paper, and I presented myself to them in the doorway. And they said, "Hey, happy birthday." And I said, "I'm 7. And my father smiled and said, "You know what that means, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, that I'm going to have a party and a cake and get a lot of presents." And my dad said, "Well, yes, but more importantly, being 7 means that you have reached the age of reason, and you're now capable of committing any and all sins against God and man." Now, I had heard that phrase, age of reason, before. Sister Mary Kevin had been bandying it about my 2nd grade class at school, but when she said it, the phrase seemed all caught up in the excitement of preparations for our first communion and our first confession, and everybody knew that was really all about the white dress and the white veil, and anyway, I wasn't really paying all that much attention to that phrase, age of reason. So I said, yeah, age of reason. What does that mean again? And my dad said, "Well, in the Catholic Church, we believe that God knows that little kids don't know the difference between right and wrong, but that when you're 7, you're old enough to know better. So you've grown up and reached the age of reason. And that's when God starts taking notes on you and begins your permanent record." I said, "Oh, wait a minute. You mean all that time up till today, all that time that I was good, God didn't notice it?" And my mom said, "Well, I noticed it." And I thought, how could I not have known this before? How could it not have sunk in when they'd been telling me about it? All that being good and no real credit for it. And worst of all, how could I not have realized this important information until the very day that it was basically useless to me? I said, "Well, wait a minute, Mom and Dad. What about Santa Claus? I mean, Santa Claus knows if you're naughty or nice, right?" And my dad said, "Yes, that's true. But I think that's really technically only between Thanksgiving and Christmas." And my mother said, "Oh, Bob, let's just tell her. She is 7. Julie, there is no Santa Claus." Now, this was actually not that upsetting to me. My parents had this whole elaborate story about Santa Claus, how they had talked to Santa himself and agreed that instead of Santa delivering our presents over the night of Christmas Eve, like he did for every other family who got to open their surprises first thing Christmas morning, our family would give Santa more time. Santa would come to our house while we were at 9 o'clock high mass on Christmas morning, but only if all of us kids did not make a fuss, which was really very suspicious. It was pretty obvious that it was really our parents giving us the presents. My dad had a very distinctive wrapping style, and my mom's handwriting was so much like Santa's. And why would Santa save time by having to loop back to our house after he'd gone to everyone else's? There was only one obvious conclusion to reach. Our family was too strange and weird for even Santa Claus to come visit it. And my poor parents were trying to protect us from this embarrassment, this humiliation of rejection by Santa, who was jolly. But let's face it, he was also very judgmental. So to find out that there was actually no Santa at all was sort of a relief. I left the kitchen not in shock about Santa, but rather I was just dumbfounded about how I could have missed this whole age of reason thing. It was too late for me, but maybe I could help someone else. Someone who could use the information. They had to fit 2 criteria. They had to be old enough to be able to understand the concept of the age of reason, and not yet 7 years old. The answer was obvious. I had to tell my brother Bill. He was 6. I finally found him a block away at the public school playground. It was Saturday, and he was all alone kicking a ball against the side of a wall. I ran up to him and said, "Bill, I just realized that the age of reason starts when you turn 7, and then you're capable of committing any and all sins against God and man." And Bill said, "So?" And I said, "So? You still have 1 year to do anything you want." And Bill said, "So?" And I said, "So? Everything!" And I turned and ran, so angry with him. But when I got to the top of the steps, I turned dramatically and said, "Oh, by the way, Bill, there is no Santa Claus." Now, I didn't know it at the time, but I actually wasn't turning 7 on September 10th. For my 13th birthday, I had planned a slumber party with all of my girlfriends. But a couple of weeks beforehand, my mother took me aside and said, "I need to speak to you privately. Meet me in the hallway." And we went to the hallway, and she said, "September 10th is not your birthday, it's October 10th. And I said, "What?" And she said, "You see, in order to start kindergarten, you had to be 5 years old by September 15th. So I told him your birthday was September 10th, and then I guess I wasn't sure that you wouldn't just tell everyone your real birthday, so I told you your birthday was September 10th. And Julie, you were so ready to start school, honey. You were so ready." When I was 4, I was the eldest of 4 children already, and my mother had another baby to come, and I think she understandably thought, "This kid is ready, she's so ready to get out of here." Then she said, "Don't worry, Julie. Every year when it was your birthday, but you didn't know it, I made sure that you ate a piece of cake that day." Which was very comforting and disturbing. All I could really think of at the time, besides the fact that it was going to be embarrassing to reschedule my slumber party with all my friends, was that this meant I was no longer a Virgo. I had a huge Virgo poster in my bedroom. I read my horoscope every day and had horoscope books, and it was also totally me. And this meant that I was a Libra. So I took the bus downtown to get the Libra poster. The Virgo poster has this beautiful woman with long hair on it, sitting by the sea. But the Libra poster is just a huge scale. This was also about the time that I started filling out physically, and I was filling out a lot more than a lot of the other girls, and frankly, the whole idea that my astrological sign was now a gigantic scale seemed just depressing and ominous. But I got the poster of the scales, and I started to read my new Libra horoscope every day, and I was astonished to find it was also totally me. Later, thinking about the whole age of reason thing, I realized that I actually had another month to do anything I wanted before God started keeping tabs on me. Life is so unfair. Okay, so that's the beginning of the monologue, and then I'm just going to cut. So all kinds of things happen, drama, intrigue. Okay, basically in the meantime, what really kicks it off is I have a terrible breakup, and I fall into a big depression, and I don't even like to say depression. It was just a big sadness. Let's say it like that. And I was really, really sad for like months on end. I was like 36. It was sort of like a turning point for a lot of things for me, and it was very upsetting. And I had this sort of like, what I thought was a religious experience where I was crying and crying, and I woke up in the night, and I felt like I heard God saying to me, like, "I love you, everything's going to be okay." And it did feel like I had this huge experience. Like, it was a physical experience. My whole body calmed down, I was able to sleep, and I made this big turning point, and I really thought that I was very close to God, and I felt like I had to be more religious outwardly. Like, I was raised Catholic, I always had liked it, but I wasn't like part of a church or anything. So I went and joined a church, and then I took a Bible study class because I'd never really read the Bible, because the Catholics don't really push the Bible very much. And in the Bible study class, that's really where it all unraveled. I always say to people, if they're religious, they really should just sit down and read the Bible, and I just dare them to be religious after they're finished. So I go through that, and then I kind of discover science, and I'm like almost 40 years old at this point, and I kind of knew enough science to get through school, but I hadn't really, the impact of it all had not really hit me. I saw the world in this other way. And so there's this point in my monologue where I'm realizing that I probably don't believe in God, but I just can't accept that for me. I just can't accept it. And so anyway, here I go. Okay. This is when I'm kind of musing about all the things I've learned and its relation to religion. I learned that because our brain, because I'm thinking about this experience I had with the waking up in the night and God, saying that he loved me. I learned that because our brain is in some deep fundamental ways unaware of itself, hallucinations like angels or ghosts or out-of-body or near-death experiences are perceived as real encounters or actual events. And so most people, including me, instinctively think of the mind as something separate from the body, even though there is no scientific evidence that they are separate. It turns out that we are organic beings in essence, our minds living and dying along with our bodies, and sometimes even before our bodies, as it takes just one visit with a person with Alzheimer's to realize. So our common sense view of the world can be mistaken. My instincts can tell me one thing, like that the earth is flat, because it seems to be flat while I'm walking around on it. But the earth isn't flat, as the facts show us. I suddenly realized that there were implications to everything I was learning. My assumption about God's role in our lives was getting squeezed. I didn't think he intervened in our lives. I didn't think he was necessary for us to evolve. I tried not to think of the implications, but it was impossible not to. One day, I was commenting out my bathtub, and I thought, what if it's true? What if humans are here because of pure random chance? What if there is no guiding hand, no external regulation, no one watching? It is clearly possible that this may be true. In fact, this is what our scientific evidence is pointing towards. But if it were true, what would that mean? I had spent so much time thinking about what God meant, I realized I hadn't spent any time thinking about what not God meant. A few days later, I was walking to my office in my backyard, and I realized that there was this teeny-weeny voice whispering in my head. I'm not sure how long it had been there, but it suddenly got just 1 decibel louder. It whispered, "There is no God." And I tried to ignore it, but it got a little bit louder. There is no God. There is no God. Oh my God, there is no God! I sat down in my backyard under my barren apricot tree. Oh, that's a reference to something earlier. I'm skipping. Okay, anyway, I sat down and I thought, okay, I admit it. I do not believe that there is enough evidence to continue to believe in God. The world behaves exactly as you would expect it would if there were no supreme being, no supreme consciousness, and no supernatural. My best judgment tells me that it's much more likely that we invented God than that God invented us. And I shuddered. I felt like I was slipping off a raft. And then I thought, but I can't! I don't know if I can not believe in God. I need God. I mean, we have a whole history together. But then I thought, wait a minute. If you look over my life, every step of maturing for me, every single one, has the same common denominator, and it was accepting what was true over what I wished were true. This was the case about guys, about my career, about my parents. So how can I come up against this biggest question, the ultimate question? Do I really believe in a personal God and then turn away from the evidence? How can I believe just because I want to? How will I have any respect for myself if I do that? I thought of Pascal's wager. Pascal argued that it's better to bet there is a God because if you're wrong, there's nothing to lose. But if there is, you win an eternity in heaven. But I can't force myself to believe just in case it turns out to be true. The God I've been praying to knows what I think. He doesn't just make sure I show up for church. How could I possibly pretend to believe? I might convince other people, but surely not God. And plus, if I lead my life according to my own deeply held moral principles, what difference did it make if I believed in God or not? Why would God care if I believed in him? And wouldn't that God understand exactly why I doubted so deeply? And then I thought, but I don't know how not to believe in God. I don't know how you do it. How do you get up? How do you go through the day? I thought, okay, calm down. Let's just try on the not believing in God glasses for a moment, just for a second. Just put on the no God glasses, take a quick look around, and then immediately throw them off. And I put them on and I looked around. I'm embarrassed to report that I initially actually felt dizzy. I actually had this thought: how does the Earth stay up in the sky? I mean, we're just hurtling through You mean we're just hurtling through space? That's so vulnerable. And I wanted to run out and catch the Earth as it fell out of space into my hands. And then I remembered, oh yeah, gravity and angular momentum is going to keep us revolving around the sun for probably a really long time. And then I thought, well, what's going to stop me from just running out and murdering people? And I had to walk myself through it, like, why are we ethical? Well, because we have to be. We're social animals. We have to get along with each other. We evolved a moral sense, like an aversion to random murder, in order for communities to exist, because communities help us survive better. And then we made laws against things like wanton murder to codify our ethics. So I guess that's why I'm not going to run out and just start murdering people. And then I felt like I cheated on God somehow just by having these thoughts. And I ran into the house and prayed and asked God to help me have faith. But already it felt slightly silly and vacant, and I felt like I was just talking to myself. I thought, I'll just not believe in God for 1 hour a day and see how it goes. So the next day I tried it again. And I thought, wait a minute, you mean, what about all those people who are like unjustifiably jailed somewhere horrible, and they're like in solitary confinement, and all they do is pray? This means that I think they're praying to nobody? Is that possible? And then I thought, we gotta do something to get those people out of jail, because no one else is looking out for them but us. No God is hearing their pleas. And I guess that goes for really poor people too, or really oppressed people, who I had this vague idea they had a God to comfort them, or an even vaguer idea that God had orchestrated their lot for some unknowable grand design. And I walked around thinking, no one is minding the store. And I wondered how traffic worked, like how we all just weren't in chaos all the time. And slowly I began to see the world completely differently. I had to rethink what I thought about everything. It's like I had to go change the wallpaper of my mind. Eventually, I was able to say goodbye to God, and I imagined him as this old man, more like a broken down version of the God on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And if you look closely, you could see the Jesus face on my poster in my high school bedroom, but older, much older, with long gray hair and lots of lines on his face, an old hippie God that still smoked. And at one time he seemed all powerful and loving and protective, but now he just seemed a little stinky. And he was sitting on his suitcases by the front door of my house, and I said to him, I'm sorry, God, it's not you, it's me. It's just, I don't think you exist. I mean, God, look at it this way. It's really because I take you so seriously that I can't believe in you. If it's any consolation, it's sort of a sign of respect. So, just sit here as long as you want to. Stay for a while if you need to. There's no hurry. And slowly, over the course of several months, he disappeared. Looking back on it, I think I just walked around in a daze for a few months. My mind became such a private place. I had shared my mind with a God my entire life, and now I realized that my thoughts were completely my own. No one was monitoring them. No one was compassionately listening to them. My thoughts were my own private affair, and something no one but me knew about. Thank you. Okay, so now I guess I'm taking some questions from you. I know you're all just dying to ask me things. Yeah.
So Thanksgiving is coming up, and you have to spend time with your family.
Yes.
And they know your stance on where you're at.
They have really evolved. So in the show, when it comes out that I'm an atheist, my parents don't talk to me for 9 months, and it causes a huge disruption in the family. My mom calls the Jesuit priest and asks them to come visit me to convince me to believe in God again. It's like terrible. And really, I embarrassed them terribly because it was in the paper. It's really because I was well known and it was in the paper. If it was just a private thing, I mean, at the time I thought that's so superficial of them to be upset. But now that I understand more about the evolution of group societies, I understand what I really did. I really just was saying, I'm not part of you anymore to the public. And that was really humiliating to them. So I have a little more understanding of it. But Now, since my dad has died, so many members of my family have died since then. My brother, my dad, and my mom, who is the most insecure of the whole family in terms of needing the public to see her in a certain way, that not being religious was just very deeply upsetting to her. I think she stopped going to church, but she hasn't told me.
Oh, interesting.
And now she's like almost 80, and she has a lot of funerals to go to, and she won't say I'm not religious, but I talk to her on Sundays often, and I ask what happened today, and there's never church in it. And so she just doesn't bring it up anymore. So she is coming for Thanksgiving, and I am having 20 people to my house just outside Chicago. Relatives from New York, and my sister from Japan is coming with her husband, and it's going to be a big thing. And the only thing that's difficult is we have one person in our family who's dating someone who I think voted for Trump. But other than that, I think it's going to be okay. And I think the big thing is, so I've recently mentored a Syrian that just arrived 2 months ago, and they're going to come. And so that's probably going to be the bigger thing. But I think everyone's on board with that. I don't think anyone will have any problem with that. So that's a long answer, sorry. Are any of you available to come for Thanksgiving? Big table. Yeah?
Is becoming more public about secularism, or is there anything you would do differently in retrospect?
Oh gosh, I always have so many things I would do differently, and I try to spend not my entire life going over how I should have just done everything differently. But even though it made for a good plot point in my monologue that my parents stopped speaking to me, I really should have told them earlier about it. I really just kept it to myself because I felt like it's a private thing, and I didn't prepare them like I wish. But in terms of the public, I have no regrets at all. I mean, I think it was like, it may end up being the best thing I ever did in my whole life, actually.
So do you think your mom, though, had an inkling? Because you obviously probably didn't go to church. And you didn't.
No, I always went to church. I still go to church. That's another topic. Okay. No, I love the Catholic Mass. I always go to church. I go to church more than them, and I listen. I hear every single thing that goes on in there. They go, they don't even listen. So I always went.
Oh.
So that, I know, but it was very, my parents saw their religion as their ethnicity, as their culture. It was not even so much a religion. It is a religion, but it was really like, we're Irish Catholics, and when we came from Ireland, the church in Chicago helped our family, and it's interesting now that I'm helping the Syrian family, because I see it all happening, with their mosque that I'm taking them to, and how I understand how people in America are more religious often than people like in Europe, because they came here needing this hub so bad. But it was really more out of allegiance to that. So, yeah, okay. I don't know if that answers the question, but I just stopped talking. Okay, yes.
So, just about the stuff you talked about at the beginning, you mentioned Santa Claus.
Yes.
And I'm curious how you feel we should talk to kids about Santa Claus?
I am so mixed about it. Okay, so this is what I have a daughter.
Yeah.
And I just didn't bring it up. Like, I just didn't, Christmas came, there was a tree, I put presents under it. She saw Santa Claus as a vague part of the art of that time of the year, but she wasn't in school, so there was no pressure. And then, and I thought, and it's because I didn't feel like I could lie to her. I really couldn't lie to her. My parents lied to me all the time. It's not just religion, they just routinely lied to us, and they just thought it was their right and okay to lie to a kid. And I really think it has to be dire circumstances for you to lie to a kid. Really, I actually didn't know if I could physically do it. I didn't know if I could physically tell her a story that was not true, and I feel like it really took the punch out of it to say, let's pretend there's a man, I didn't know how to do it. Okay, so then she was about to go to nursery school, and I thought, oh, I'm the worst parent. I've denied her all this great fun. All my friends' kids were loving Santa Claus, so excited about it. So I debated about it, and then on Christmas Eve, I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to tell her about Santa Claus. But I realized, in retrospect, she was really too old. Okay, so I go, Mulan. There's a guy. has been watching you. And his name is Santa Claus. She was just like, what? Yeah, he has been taking notes on whether you're good or bad. And based on his notes, he's going to come into our house during the night. And leave you some presents. And she was like, ah! She was so upset. I was like, no, it's fun. I said, no, it's fun. She's like, how does he get in the house? And I go, he goes, we locked the door. I go, no, he comes down the chimney. She's like, ah, the chimney. Oh my God, it was such a trauma. She couldn't go to sleep in her own room. She had to sleep with me. She kept waking up like whimpering. It was like, in the morning, I went out. I put a present. She finally fell asleep. I put the presents. I came back in. I go, Lauren, let's go out and see if Santa Claus came. And she sat up in bed and just went, ah! And then, okay, so then I go, well, okay, it's a story people tell. And then she was confused by it. And I go, and you're going to go to school, and everyone's going to talk about it, but don't say it's just a story because they really believe it. And it was hard. It was terrible. The whole thing was traumatic. I have to say, it was, I don't even know what I would have done. I don't even know the right thing to do. What is it? What is the right thing to do? I don't know. Okay.
So you take your daughter then to Mass?
Well, yes, I did. I used to. And then when she was 6, I met this guy who was really an atheist. Not just an atheist, he doesn't even like to be, he wouldn't even be in this room, there's too many people in it. Like, he can't be in a group. Okay, so, and of course I'm an atheist, so that was good. But I like religion. I find it fascinating sociologically. I actually like the hymns, I like the music, it's part of our culture. I enjoy being in a group singing, I like it. So, sometimes I drag her with me. Then I did this huge project where I thought, okay, I'm going to go to a different church every Sunday for a year. And I did it. And it was the most incredible thing. I there's something, like I didn't go to a mosque. I did go to a synagogue. I learned about Chicago by going to these churches. And it was mind-blowingly fascinating. And then I ended up at this Unitarian church in Evanston. And I just was there. I was just checking it off my list of churches I was going to. And it was my first experience not disagreeing with every single thing they said. And it was actually so emotional that I was like crying. Like I couldn't hold it in. Like I couldn't believe how beautiful this religion was and how open they were, and they were evolving, and they were saying it was okay to be an atheist. Some people believe, some people don't, but it was sort of like the dream church. And I kind of didn't even know what to do with that. And then by this time, Mulan was like 13 and didn't want to do anything I ever said. So it was kind of too late to get her into it. And then finally I ended up joining this church. And I really like it. And we went on Sunday. And it was actually really healing after the election. We had like a harmonica, America the Beautiful. People were crying and hugging in the church. And my husband said, I wish I didn't hate religion so much. Because he was crying too. We were all it was a moving experience amongst a lot of people with beautiful music. It was, to me, everything that's great about a church. So, that's my long answer. I don't know, I'm responding to you to everything. Yes.
What is your take on the ongoing squabble over the usage/boundaries of the words atheist versus agnostic versus non-religious and so on?
I don't know. I think it's all okay. You know what I mean? I think all the words are there to help people along. I think even I didn't like the word atheist at first. I felt like it didn't describe me. Now I just say it, it's no problem. And it definitely does describe how I feel. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like people who say they're agnostic just to be non-confrontational. That really bothers me. I just think, come on, don't wuss out. Just say you're an atheist. It's powerful to say you're an atheist. I remember when my friend Maria Semple, who wrote Where'd You Go, Bernadette, by the way. She's become a big, famous author now. She's my good friend, and we were in LA, and I was researching all this stuff, and I go, Maria, we never talked about religion. She goes, oh, I'm an atheist. And then we sat down and talked about something else, and it was powerful that she said that. It was really powerful. Like, I was like, oh, she just said it like it was nothing. So I do like the word atheist in that sense. but I feel like there's room for everyone. Like, I don't want to get too much. I feel like if we, say you have to say atheist and not agnostic, we're going to turn off a lot of people. And I really think it's a gradual road for a lot of people. It definitely was for me. So I don't like the idea of shaming people for describing their belief in a certain way or saying that's not the right way. On the other hand, I want them to say atheist. Okay, so another question. Yes.
So in your time like at SNL, did like religion or like a lack thereof ever like come up in like sketches or ideas for sketches or other actors?
Yes. Like I think, well, first of all, Victoria Jackson was on the cast and she was an incredibly evangelical religious person. She still is. But everyone just thought she was a nut, like she was just like a kook. And she's actually a really nice person. I'm still in email with her. But everyone else, I think, it's so funny, in show business, people either, my set in the comedy arena, people are just so atheist, it's like not even worth mentioning. It's like saying I'm a human being. Like people wouldn't even stop and talk about it. I mean, like it's just, or they haven't really thought about it very much. But there's not very many people who are really religious, unless you're an Orthodox Jew, Orthodox Jews. But that's a different thing. Like they really seem to be doing that more for cultural reasons, although I don't know. But I felt like when I did my show, Letting Go of God, in Hollywood, most of the reaction of my friends were, I didn't know you believed in God. Because I was talking about the beginning part is when I talked about when I believed in God. And they were like, God, so like when I was like hanging out with you 3 years ago, that's when you believed in God! Oh my God! Yeah, that was the biggest reaction. Yes.
So, one thing that I identify with your story is just this journey of going, from believing to non-believing. But there are other people who are just raised atheist or raised without religion. And I'm curious, like, what you like? Is there like a power or like a value that your own experience has on going through this transition? And is that more valuable than just being raised in it, or?
I don't know. Right now I'd say yes, because I feel like my daughter has so little interest in religion, I can't get her interested enough to just know the myths that you need to know to be an adult in the world and understand the references that come from the Bible. I mean, like, like to live in our culture, there is constant references to stories, from Christianity and from the Bible stories. And you really can't be, literate adult without knowing those stories. And so I worry about that with her. And I notice in her high school, which is a public high school, they teach Greek and Roman mythology, but they don't actually teach you about the Bible, which I think you should be learning about religion and about the Bible, but they won't even touch it. So I feel like that's a big mistake, because there's so many great stories in the Bible. I mean, the Bible was ruined by people insisting it was true. It's actually a great collection of crazy stories. I'll take one last question. I know you.
Hi. Your monologue that you did, Letting Go of God, came out like maybe 10 years ago or so?
No, longer. No, it's 2004.
2004. So I'm wondering if you still hear from people who have heard it today for the first
Yes,
time.
I'm actually surprised, and I'm the worst business person and caretaker of my own art, because yes, I hear from people all the time. In fact, last week I was with Richard Dawkins. We did a show in Grand Rapids, and we did another show in Indianapolis where I interviewed him on stage, and afterwards I was surprised how many people came up that were just like listening to it, had gotten it on Audible or something, and how it had helped them so much. Or, this is my favorite thing, and I've heard this a lot, is that people say, I went through it on my own, but then when I was trying to show my girlfriend about it, or my parents about it, I showed them your thing, because it made them understand it. And that made me so happy. So, all right. Thank you, everyone.